Opening day is only a couple of days away. The roster seems like it's there. We'll get into that next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Last couple of days of spring training. Man, it has been way too long because I'm ready for some games. I'm ready for some games that count. I feel like spring training has been just as long as the regular off season, like off season from the final time the Brewers played against Arizona all the way up until spring training. I feel that was just as long as spring training has been, but it's been a pretty quick overall off season so far, if you ask me. I mean, getting from the end of the season to spring training went quick, but man, we need to get some games going. And Thursday, the Brewers open up against New York at New York. I wish they were kind of home this weekend. It'd be great to be going out to the ballpark this weekend, seeing some baseball. I don't know why Major League Baseball would not schedule games at AmFam Field in March. Why not? Instead of going to New York, where you have open air stadium and who knows what kind of weather. And I know in New York in late March, you can get some nice weather. You get some nice weather in February. You know, it's a rarity in Wisconsin, but still, you got the dome there. Why are we not opening up at home this week? That's bizarre. Again, that's Major League Baseball for you. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Get us on Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major downloads for downloading this, and you're going to want to be aboard because we're going to have a fun season. Now, Vegas predictions on a bunch of different levels, man, their expectations aren't high. Maybe we have higher expectations than them. Maybe so. I was at the casino this past weekend. A couple of guys asked me who watched the podcast, Chuck, real honestly, they pulled me over, Chuck, honestly, how do you think the Brewers are going to do? And I'm honest right here on this podcast. A guy told me the other day on Twitter, I said something about the Badgers. He said, I wish you were this blunt about the Brewers. I am, because some of you think I'm too blunt about the Milwaukee Brewers, so you can't win sometimes. But we'll get into that, all that coming up here on the show. The final roster set by the Milwaukee Brewers. A couple of guys who are the odd men out, no surprise. And, you know, we'll talk about who's going to play third base and where some of these guys fit into this team. But again, you get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, and of course on YouTube, our video version. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and of course, hit the subscribe button on any platform we're on. It'll alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. Follow me on Twitter as well, Chuck Freeman, Freimund. All right, let's start with Brandon Woodruff. He says he's shutting it down as far as not pitching any for the team in 2024. He's not shutting it down. He's throwing from about 30 feet away, but he's not going to be ready for the regular season. And I'm good with this. And I just never thought, well, realistically, we could have him at the end of the season. No, why? Let's just rest him, rehab him, and get him ready for 2025. 2 years, $17 million. That sounds like a lot to pay him. But if you really looked at a big breakdown of that contract, it's really not all that bad. And for having a guy like Woodruff around, I'm good with that. So shutting him down for 2024 as far as having him not pitch in a major league game is I'm good with. Let him rehab and get him ready for 2025 and hopefully beyond. All this work that the physicians and the medical staff of the Milwaukee Brewers are putting into him, hopefully that bodes well down the line that they can re-sign him because he's pitching with a new shoulder, he says. I mean, he's had that shoulder reconstructed. To hear him talk about it, that he's pitching with essentially a new shoulder, a little scary, to be honest with you. But he says he's not going to forget how to pitch. He's still going to know how to pitch, which is important. You can have the greatest arm in the world, but if you don't know how to pitch and swing and misses and all that, well, that's not going to get you anywhere. There's been a lot of guys who've come through, even on the Milwaukee Brewers, who've come through, have had great arms, but didn't know how to pitch. Woody knows how to pitch, and that's a big part of it. Says he's not forgotten how to pitch. So get that arm and shoulder ready to go. As far as the roster, it appears to be set. Now, as of this taping, mid-afternoon on Monday. It sounds like Garrett Mitchell is going to avoid a trip to the injured list. He had a bad hand. He injured his hand. He had the x-rays done. Sounded, according to the tweets, that he's going to be left off the injured list as of right now, which means Eric Haas would not make this team. And we'll see what the situation is. By the time you watch this, they might have already made a decision, but which is a shame. Again, why did they sign Eric in the offseason? And then why did they go ahead and sign Gary Sanchez? I thought Eric Haas was a great option as a backup. Terrific. And he did a nice job in spring training, proved he belongs. He had proven to me he belonged anyway with the Tigers. But they obviously felt with signing Gary Sanchez, that was a better option than Eric Haas. So we'll see where Haas, if he's DFA'd, we'll see what happens there. But that's probably a likely situation because he doesn't have any options left. But that was just an odd move why you sign Haas and then go out and give Gary Sanchez $7 million. I don't know. I think Eric Haas, to me, that was a better option, but we'll see how that works out. But as of right now, it sounds like Garrett Mitchell is going to avoid the injured list, and Eric Haas is not going to make the team. Those who made the team, no surprise, Ortiz was told a couple of days ago that he was going to make the team. I mean, they traded for him. He's going to make the team. He's going to make the roster. He's going to make that opening day roster. Perkins made it when it looked like some in doubt. Switch hitter, best defensive outfield. Monasterio making the team. You knew he was going to make it. Now, what it comes down to, for second and third base, you have four players who are vying for starting jobs. Ortiz, Terang, Monasterio, and Frelick. To me, I've said all along, I want Frelick as my everyday third baseman. I just watched him defensively lately, and I know he was not getting a lot of balls hit to him during the course of spring training, but lately he has, and I'm telling you, I've seen enough out of him that I want him to be my starting third baseman. Righties, lefties, I don't care. I don't want to see him out of the lineup. Like last year, I would get so frustrated, and I know he struggled, but he did not have a big sample size against left-handers, so Counts would never play him against lefties. Get him in there. He's an everyday player. Get Frelick into the lineup. Get him as right now there's no spot for him to play outfield, so I'm playing him at third base. But we'll see. Maybe they go with Ortiz on opening day against Quintana. We'll see. I don't know. Terang and Monasterio. I'd be surprised if Frelick is not in the starting lineup on opening day. That would just stun me. You got to find a spot. And then if Mitchell wasn't on the opening day roster because of an injury, if he had to make a trip to the injured list, then you move Frelick to the outfield, and Monasterio is my starting third baseman on opening day, not Ortiz. But my order for third baseman as of right now, Frelick and Monasterio. Now, you know how I feel about Monasterio. I've talked about how he was a little bit of an overachiever last year. Great guy to have as a utility, but I think at this point, I like him better than Ortiz at third base. I do. If this was a young and growing team and that we didn't have visions of going to the postseason, then I'd go with Ortiz with the upside there. But we're trying to win the National League Central. You're drafting and developing, so to speak, trading and developing these young guys, but still at the same time, you're competing. And Monasterio is my better option at third base. Terang has already been told he's a second baseman. Is the second baseman, provided he doesn't get off to a slow start. Terang is playing second, and then Ortiz, Monasterio, and Frelick over at third. And right now, Frelick is my third baseman. Depending if Garrett Mitchell, that hand continues to bother him, then he goes back out to the outfield. So that's the way that goes. Perkins kept on his team. A little surprised there, but defensively, he's just an A+++ outfielder. He's had a couple of clutch hits. Do I feel very confident when Perkins comes to the plate? Not really. Not really. There's other guys in the outfield like better than him. But Perkins making the team. And Pat Murphy said this, and this is just like for some of you guys still follow the Packers who follow this, that when somebody from the Packers makes the roster, that doesn't mean anything because you could make the roster and be cut 2 days later. So some of these guys might make the opening day roster, but they might not be here for Saturday's game against the Mets. It's going to be a fluid roster. It really is. And that's what's scary. Well, it's kind of been a fluid roster over the years. Hasn't it been? I mean, look at 2018. Look at last year. Look at the way it's been. They'll shuttle guys in and out, up and down from AAA. Now, what scares me is the TBA rotation, which we're already talking about a TBA for game 2 of that series against the Mets. We'll get into that coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along here. And, we couldn't do this without our great sponsors. Could not do it without people like FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. How'd you do this past weekend? How did you do as we get to the Sweet 16? The favorites were coming in. The favorites were just rolling this weekend. And, I'm sure a lot of you did well on there. The public likes to go on favorites, and I'm sure that happened. And FanDuel, hey, your bracket might be busted after this weekend. Might have been busted after opening day. But FanDuel will let you bet on every game of the tournament. And some of these other tournaments that are going on, there's like Friday afternoon, there was a tournament CBI or CIT that was going on in Florida with Montana. So whether you're betting on a big upset or a #1 seed, time to go dancing with America's #1 sports book. New customers now get $200 in bonus bets for your first $5 bet if it wins. $200 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who is going to win it all. I used my bonus on live lining Alabama last night. Alabama was down. Alabama was down in their game against Grand Canyon. Live lined it. Free money right there. $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all with this free money. Just go to America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Hit locked on and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. But that $200 in bonus bets is going to be coming your way with that first $5 bet that wins. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, and of course our growing YouTube page. Please hit us up on YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers. We'll be right here talking Brewers with you. I know some of you DM'd me and said, Freeman, you haven't shaved in a while. I have not shaved since the girls' state basketball tournament when I broadcast the Laconia Spartans 2 weeks ago. Just let it grow for a little bit to see how it is. It's getting scratchy, but it is coming off here in the next couple of days. All right, we're coming right back after this timeout. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. It scares me when I hear the other day Pat Murphy talking about, he says, we're going to have a lot of TBAs this year, means to be announced as far as starting pitchers. And already for game 2 of the series against the Mets, while Peralta's going in game 1, it's a TBA right now. The Brewers could be having an opener in that series. 2 games into the season, we're thinking about using an opener. I'm telling you, this TBA and this who's going to pitch every other day, that's going to exhaust the bullpen. That's going to exhaust the pitchers. That's scary for a team that we're hoping can contend for a playoff or a World Series spot. But it's either going to be DL Hall on that second game against the Mets, or they could go with an opener or a TB. It might be TBA. A lot of times they'll be doing that. We talk about the pitchers coming up for a series. We'll be sitting here talking about, well, we don't know who's pitching on Saturday, and certainly we don't know who's pitching on Sunday. And that's the case right out of the chute with the Brewers. Colin Ray appears to be the starter for game 3 against the Mets. So Peralta, Hall, Ray, and TBA. That's how we're going to go this year. Peralta, Hall, Ray, and TBA, or in this case, looks like it's TBA for Saturday. Ross and Junis could fill out the rest of this rotation. Oh my, I'm scared. And when I was talking about with the boys at the casino on Thursday, I was talking to those boys and I said, hey, you don't know what this Brewer pitching staff, that's the scary part about it. And that's why the Vegas odds are such long shots with them, because I think a lot of people are frightened with this starting rotation. I think every year we have some negatives with the Milwaukee Brewers, some things we're suspicious about, some things we are unsure about, but it seems like it's always worked out in recent years. And of course, there's been postseason failure, but in recent years, it's worked out for the Milwaukee Brewers. But I can't tell you how much that scares me, this rotation. And Freddie, they're talking about Freddie. I saw this in an article. Somebody mentioned him being a Cy Young candidate. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's just have him go out there and give us a couple of quality starts first before we talk about Freddie being a Cy Young candidate. I mean, I'm questioning whether or not Freddie's even a number 1 or a number 2 starter right now in Major League Baseball. Let's see some consistency before we start talking about him being a Cy Young candidate, okay? But the time is now for that guy in his career. The time is now for him to take it up an extra notch. And he pitches Thursday against Quintana. But if anything, Peralta's got to kick it up in an extra gear. Big for him, who is looking for a salary grab here in the next couple of years. Let's face it, these are proving years for him, okay? But it's also important for the Milwaukee Brewer organization to see what they have with Freddie. And if Freddie is not an ace on this team, that's going to be some problems for the Milwaukee Brewers, because Freddie, a lot of pressure on him to be an ace. He didn't ask to be an ace, but he moves up, obviously, without Peralta or without Burns and without Woodruff on the opening day roster. Peralta's the number 1 guy. Hey, they weren't going to go out in the offseason and make a trade or spend some cash for a number 1 starter. Number 1 starters, they're going to have to groom within the organization because of just the financial mess that Major League Baseball has gotten itself into over the years. Peralta is going to have to be their guy as the number 1 starter. That's the way we're going here. So Peralta, DL Hall, Ray, and TBA. Sounds like how it is. Now, Wade Miley doesn't sound like he's going to be the opening day starter. The injured list for him, and I'm okay with that. He's got the shoulder injury. I just don't want Miley. I hope this is not a thing, because they need Miley. I mean, they're banking a lot on him, making 33 starts this year. And 38, 39 years old. Again, hinging a lot on him to come through and have a big year. But, would have loved to have him for opening day. We'll see who they go with on opening day when the Brewers open up with the Twins next Tuesday. All right, we come back. The Brewers are dropping in Vegas. That line keeps on dropping. We'll get to that coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. I love Amazon Fire TV. I have it just to the left of me here. So when I'm here in the Locked On Brewers studio, at night, I'm watching the game right here on my Fire TV. Got the MLB package. I got Bally Sports, the app, all pulled up on my Fire Stick. So I'm watching other games, and I got the Brewers going on here, taking notes, getting ready to come on the air with you when I'm not covering the games out of the ballpark, watching the games right here. And Fire TV is the way to go. I'm telling you, what I really love about Fire TV is I can go anywhere and install this on my bring it outside my TV and watch sports out there, live games, highlights, in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with all smart TVs. And you know what? All smart TVs, they're here to stay. And that's a great thing because you can watch it anywhere. Fire TV, the stick lets you plug into your existing TV and provides access to just not sports, but movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. And you're going to want it for baseball, even the tournament coming up this weekend, as they get into the Sweet 16. Fire TV recently also created Fire TV channels where this show is on. Locked On is on there. Dive in all the game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep you up to date with March Madness, NBA, MLB, and the Brewers, more specifically, all on this Fire Stick. And check it out. Go to the store, go to Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Trust me on this. You're going to want to get hold of Fire TV. I swear by it. It's awesome. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, we're coming right back. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host. Good to have you along here as it's finally here. The season starts in a couple of days. You know, last few years we've started in March, which I think is a great thing. Again, as I said at the top, how is the series not starting at AmFam Field? Why are we risking opening it up in, in a cold weather city like New York? I looked at the Brewers' schedule for April. A lot of road games. They have home series this first weekend. The second weekend. They take on the Twins next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the weekend series, the weekend of the Final Four. Seattle's here. Then they go on a road trip, and then they come back and they play Seattle or they play the Padres and the Yankees. So they only have 2 weekend series in April. Again, baseball should be loading up in Milwaukee in April. That's what they should do. I'm telling you, I don't understand. Take advantage of these cities. Either who are in warm weather or who have retractable roofs like the Milwaukee Brewers. But the Milwaukee Brewers, they are, by the way, an underdog going into this game against the Mets. The Mets, I checked, are a -110, a slight favorite. The Mets are, who are in a rebuilding process themselves with David Stearns and all that. But with Quintana on the hill, they are a 110 favorite against the Brewers on opening day. Win total right now, 76.5. Wow. It was at one point 80.5. It continues to plummet here in the offseason. And when Vegas sets it at 76.5, that scares me a little bit because Vegas knows what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And you look at this roster and this pitching staff, and that's why it's dropping. 76.5. Now, the fan in me says take over. Oh my God, I don't want to go under that total. That means we're going to have a tough year. But 76.5. Let's face it, Vegas really never has a high number for the Milwaukee Brewers anyway. But they went over the total last year. Whatever it was, the 92 wins. There was no way the Brewers had a 92 win total. I don't remember what it was, but 76.5 is the win total for this year. Will the Brewers make the playoffs? Plus 280, yes. Minus 350, no. Will the Brewers make the playoffs? Minus 350. So $350 to win you 100 on the no. The yes is a heavy underdog at plus 280. So if you bet 100, you'd win 280 if you think the Brewers are going to make the playoffs. God, I would put a flyer on the Brewers there to make the playoffs. I would at plus 280. Winning the NL Central plus 750. They are a more than long shot favorite to win the NL Central. Wouldn't you want to put a little bit, just dabble a little bit on the Brewers, but plus 750? That would be like in the NFL, a team being a 13-point underdog on a Sunday afternoon. A plus 750, even probably worse than that. Maybe an NBA underdog, plus 750. They would be an NBA underdog in an NBA game plus 13 would be plus 750 or so on the money line. That's what the Brewers are in the NL Central. Heavy underdog. I would sprinkle some stuff on the Brewers there. I might do that. To win the NL pennant, plus 4,500. I'd stay away from that. Win the World Series, the Brewers plus 9,000. If you bet 100 on the Brewers to win the World Series, plus you'd win $9,000 back. Win $9,000. Well, NL pennant, which the Brewers have won in their 54-year history, plus 4,500. But I think the NL Central, sprinkling something on plus 750, the win total, 76.5 going over. That's not bad. I wouldn't mind sprinkling something in the playoffs, plus 280. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's maybe worth the risk on what you're getting on there. Brewers are going to win over 76.5 games, aren't they? Hopefully. Please. Need to get there. Definitely need to get there. Otherwise, it's going to be a long summer. Like I said, if they're bringing up the rear, and I hear people, I was on a national show a couple of weeks ago where the hosts picked the Brewers to finish in last place. And I said, you forget that the Pittsburgh Pirates are still in this division. Oh, the Pirates got this this up-and-coming team. You're like, we're just nothing here. The Pirates are the Vogue pick to finish ahead of the Brewers this year. Oh, the Pittsburgh Pirates have a trademark on last place of the NL Central. I'll just say that. That's going to do it for me, Chuck Freeman. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Again, you get us on Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major downloads for your podcasts. Please hit us up on YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Chuck Freeman. So long, everybody.